My classmate sabotaged my project, so I switched our USB drives before the presentation. I always believed that if you just put your head down and worked hard, things would sort themselves out. But that's not how things work in the real world, at least not in my final semester at Kelridge Institute of Technology. It started with a project, one single high-stakes final project worth 40% of our grade in software systems integration. Our professor, Dr. Lowe, liked to assign projects in pairs, claiming it mimicked real industry conditions. I groaned when I saw my name next to Tyler's on the partner list. Tyler was one of those people who seemed to skate through life on charm and confidence alone. He dressed like he was already a tech CEO, had that infuriating smirk on his face half the time, and always knew exactly what to say to make professors laugh, even when he hadn't turned in the homework. He was the kind of guy who'd get full marks for a group assignment despite showing up at the last second. And now, he was my partner for the most important project of our entire degree. I tried to stay optimistic. Maybe, just maybe, he'd take this one seriously. I messaged him the same day. "Hey man, want to meet up this weekend to talk through the framework for the integration project?" He replied 4 hours later. "Sure thing, bro. You do any initial sketches yet?" I had. I'd already started mapping out our module interactions in backend logic flow. I sent him a PDF with my thoughts. His reply? "Nice stuff. You're really good at this." That was it. No input, no suggestions, no "let's build on this." But fine, it was early. Maybe he just needed time to warm up. We met twice over the next 3 weeks. Every time he showed up late, didn't bring a laptop, and spent more time talking about a startup idea he had for blockchain-based meal delivery than anything related to our actual work. I didn't push too hard. I kept telling myself, just get through this. I was used to carrying extra weight. I'd done it in high school, I'd done it in freshman year, I could do it now. By the 5th week, I'd coded 90% of our integration system, back-end APIs, the test suite, even the user interface. I kept everything on my USB drive and made daily backups at home. I asked Tyler to help me write documentation. He said he would. He didn't. 3 days before the deadline, we had our last scheduled check-in with Dr. Lowe. Students were supposed to demo their beta versions. I was nervous but confident. I'd worked my ass off. Tyler swaggered in 10 minutes late, said, "We've got some sick stuff to show you," and sat back. I did the demo. Lowe seemed impressed. Tyler said, "We've been putting in a lot of hours." I didn't say anything. After the check-in, Tyler clapped me on the back and said, "Dude, you crushed it. I'll handle the final presentation slides, don't worry." I hesitated. "You sure? I can just..." "Bro, you've done enough. Let me handle this part. I'll make us look like legends." I nodded, though something felt off, but I was exhausted. Maybe I wanted to believe that just this once, someone else would carry the baton for the last stretch. The next day, I brought my USB to campus to add a few minor updates to the UI. I was working in one of the lab rooms, got a call from my sister, and stepped out for 5 minutes. When I came back, the USB was still plugged in. I finished my changes, ejected it, and went home. That night, I plugged the USB into my laptop to run some final tests. The folder was empty. At first, I thought it was a loading issue. I checked again. And again. Nothing. I opened Disk Utility. It showed corrupted sectors. I ran recovery tools. Some garbage data showed up. File names with weird characters, broken directory trees. Panic punched me straight in the chest. I went to my external backup. The files were gone there too. That didn't make sense. I kept that drive disconnected unless I was actively backing up. I checked logs. There had been a connection to the external drive yesterday. Yesterday, I sat frozen. Then I checked the timestamps. My stomach dropped. Both drives had been accessed while I was out of the lab. I tried to stay calm. Maybe it was just a glitch. Maybe I'd accidentally overwritten something, but it didn't add up. Not with both devices. Not with the backups deleted too. There were only 2 people in that lab that afternoon. Me and Tyler. The thought made me feel physically sick. I messaged him. "Hey, did you use my USB earlier? Something's wrong with the files." He didn't reply for hours. Then finally, "Nah, man, I didn't touch it. You okay?" I stared at that message for a long time. It felt too quick, too polished, like he'd had it ready. I didn't sleep that night. I stayed up trying to recover what I could. I found some partial cache files in my IDE history, a few .back autosaves, fragments, but enough that I could rebuild maybe 70% of the system. I worked nonstop through the next day. Then I got a message from one of my classmates, Jason. It was a screenshot of Tyler's Instagram story, just a black screen with white text. "Let's see how good he really is when he's not doing both our parts." I felt a chill crawl up my spine. Jason added, "This about you?" I didn't reply. I didn't need to. The next morning, I skipped all my classes and went straight to the computer lab. I sat in the same seat, stared at the same USB port, and replayed every detail from the day my files disappeared. Tyler had been leaning over my shoulder a lot that afternoon, watching me code. He even offered to go get us coffee from the vending machine. I didn't think much of it then, but now, every second I'd left him alone with my stuff felt like a mistake burned into memory. The lab had no cameras. The school was still debating privacy policies. I filed a request with IT to check user access logs for the lab PCs. But that process would take days, and I didn't have days. Our final presentation was in 48 hours. I went to the library instead and started recoding from the pieces I'd salvaged. I didn't go home. I didn't sleep. I wrote like a machine. I even skipped meals. I wanted this thing done, working, flawless. I wasn't just trying to pass anymore. I was fighting for something, for proof. By midnight, the basic framework was back. Not as elegant as before, but stable. I checked everything 3 times, ran test cases, squashed bugs. I didn't stop until the sun started bleeding through the windows. And then, something snapped. I was staring at my desktop when a thought slipped into my mind like oil in water. What if I didn't just recover? What if I showed them exactly who Tyler was? The idea made my hands tremble, but I didn't push it away. I copied my full rebuilt project onto a new USB. This one password protected, encrypted, and labeled in the most boring way possible, Music Mix Finals. Then I opened a second window. I started building a copy of Tyler's presentation folder. I took everything he'd contributed, basically just the original intro slide from a week ago, and added broken UI mockups, non-functional code, and a few HTML files full of lorem ipsum. Then I added a second subfolder. Inside it, I dropped 3 screenshots. One of our private group chat from last semester where Tyler bragged about making others do his work. One of the Instagram story Jason sent me, and one I wasn't proud of taking. A screen capture from earlier that week when Tyler accidentally left his laptop open during a group meeting, showing his messages to someone named Greg. I'll tank Alex's files, then drop my version in last minute. Classic switcheroo. It wasn't exactly legal to take that shot, but I'd taken it anyway. I didn't trust him, and now I was glad I didn't. I zipped everything up, renamed the file Final Presentation Tyler USB Zip, and dropped it onto an identical USB drive. I placed both USBs into my backpack, and then I waited. The next morning, Tyler texted me, "Yo, man, everything good for today? Want to meet before the prez to align?" I replied, "Yeah, got the files ready. Meet at the hall at 2? He sent back a thumbs-up emoji. At 1:57 p.m., we met in the lobby outside the auditorium. He was grinning like he'd won something. "Hey, bro," he said, giving me that lazy, insincere slap on the back. "Ready to kill it?" I nodded, trying not to show how hard my heart was pounding. "Got the USB?" "Right here," he said, flashing it between his fingers. "Want me to plug in before we go up?" "Yeah," I said. "I'll do it. My laptop's already configured to the projector." He blinked, hesitated a little too long, then handed it over. I accidentally dropped it. "Oh crap, sorry," I said, kneeling. My hands shook a little as I switched it with mine. The one with the broken files, bad code, and his screenshots. I stood up and smiled. "All set." Cool, he said, but I could feel him watching me. We walked into the presentation hall together. It was a packed room, rows of students, several professors, and even a few reps from local tech companies scouting talent. Dr. Lowe sat near the center, nodding to each team as they approached. Tyler whispered, "I'll do the intro, then you take the demo, yeah?" "Sure," I said. He swaggered up to the podium, oozing fake confidence. "Good afternoon," he began, his voice polished. "Perfect. Today, we're going to present our capstone project, a modular, scalable integration system for cloud-based platforms, built by myself and Alex. Mostly me, of course." He chuckled. I didn't smile. He clicked the trackpad. The projector lit up, a blank white screen. He clicked again. The screen jittered, then flashed. A broken UI loaded, crooked boxes, half-missing text. He clicked into a test folder. 404 error. He tried to play a short video. It failed to load. He muttered something under his breath. People started to shift in their seats. Then, without warning, one of the screenshots popped up. The Instagram story. "Let's see how good he really is when he's not doing both our parts." A murmur spread across the room. He clicked again, another screenshot. The message to Greg. "I'll tank Alex's files, then drop my version in last minute." Classic switcheroo. Silence. His face went pale. He tried to exit the folder. Fumbled. Hit a key. Opened the third screenshot. The chat thread where he bragged about coasting through group projects while others cracked under pressure. And then, the system crashed. Blue screen. Tyler stood frozen, staring at the screen like he'd just been hit by a train. I calmly walked to the front. I've got a working copy of our real project, I said. May I? Dr. Lowe looked at Tyler, then at me, then gave a single nod. I plugged in the real USB, the one with the complete rebuilt system. I loaded our interface, ran the modules, pulled up the interactive dashboard, triggered the API test suite. Everything ran smooth as glass. I didn't say much, just walked them through the structure. Showed the logs, showed the proof of date stamps. Everything clearly developed in phases over 6 weeks. When I finished, I turned to the crowd. That's what I've been working on. Tyler was sitting now, hunched forward, eyes locked on the floor. The silence that followed my presentation was one of the longest moments of my life. Not awkward, just heavy. Like everyone in the room was processing the fact that they'd just watched a public undoing. Then someone clapped. It was one of the engineers from Solvance Tech, a startup that had been sponsoring student innovation programs all year. Others followed. The sound built up like a slow wave until even some of the professors joined in. I nodded, trying to stay composed, but inside I felt like my lungs were finally letting me breathe again. Dr. Lowe didn't clap. Instead, he stood, adjusted his glasses, and said, "Mr. Tyler, would you like to explain what we just saw?" Tyler's mouth opened, closed, opened again. I don't know how that got on there, he mumbled. Someone must have switched the drive. Who? Lowe asked flatly. Tyler's eyes darted to me. I mean, maybe Alex. I had no access to your USB, I said, calmly but clearly. You handed it to me. You watched me plug it in. Lowe looked between us for a long time. We'll talk about this after the session, he said coldly. Please sit down. Tyler sank into his chair like a man trying to disappear into it. I took the empty seat beside him. He didn't look at me once. After the presentations ended, Lowe called us into his office. It was just the three of us. No jokes, no charm, just truth. He closed the door and looked straight at Tyler. I want to hear everything. Now. I didn't do anything wrong, Tyler said, his voice shaking. This is some setup. Stop, I said, tired of dancing around it. I pulled out my laptop, opened the version history of the project from my IDE, and showed the backup logs. Daily saves, timestamped builds, API test results. Even the error logs from the day everything went missing. Then I showed the security settings of my external drive, the connection timestamps, and the exact window when it had been accessed, when I'd stepped out of the lab and Tyler had been alone. Lowe leaned back in his chair, face stony. Do you deny accessing his files? He asked Tyler. Look, okay, maybe I looked at them once, Tyler muttered, just to check progress, but I didn't delete anything. Lowe turned to me. Do you have anything else? I nodded. I'd like to show you something, I said, pulling up the screenshots. The messages to Greg, the Instagram post, the group chat. Tyler looked like he might throw up. When it was over, Lowe sighed. I've seen enough. He opened a drawer, pulled out a formal report sheet. You're excused, Alex. Thank you for coming prepared. I nodded and left. As the door clicked shut behind me, I stood in the hallway for a few seconds, unsure what to do next. It felt like something had broken open, and I didn't know whether to cry or scream or just sleep for 10 days straight. I went to the coffee shop across the street and sat in the corner with a black coffee that I barely tasted. My phone buzzed. A text from Jason. Dude, you're a legend. Then another one from someone I barely knew from class. Just watch Tyler implode. That was wild. By the end of the night, I'd received over 40 messages. Some from classmates I hadn't spoken to in months, some from juniors asking if I was going to share the code base online, and even one from a Solvance Tech recruiter asking if I'd be open to a chat. I didn't respond to any of them right away. I didn't know how I felt yet. The next morning, Lowe posted our project grades online. I had a perfect score. A note below my name read, Exceptional Individual Effort. Final grade reflects full authorship and execution. Next to Tyler's name, grade pending academic review. I found out a few days later that he'd been reported to the Academic Integrity Board. The hearing was scheduled for the following week. I didn't plan on attending until I got an email from the board requesting my testimony. Apparently, Tyler was challenging the evidence and had serious concerns about the veracity of my screenshots. Fine. I showed up. The hearing was in a small conference room in the administration building. There were 5 faculty members, a student liaison, and a silent observer from legal. Tyler sat across from me, in a suit 2 sizes too big, looking like he hadn't slept in days. They asked him to speak first. He went off on some convoluted story about misunderstood intentions, how he was trying to surprise me with a better version of the project, and how the files got mixed up accidentally. He even cried. I sat there, jaw clenched, until they asked me to respond. I didn't need to say much. I had timestamped save files, server logs, recovered backups, witness testimony, screenshots. My presentation had already been recorded on video. When I was done, one of the professors leaned in and said, "Do you believe Mr. Tyler sabotaged your project intentionally?" "Yes," I said. "I believe he thought he could take credit for my work and make me look like I'd failed. And when I protected myself, it exposed what he really is." Tyler didn't say another word for the rest of the hearing. A week later, I got the verdict. Tyler had been found in violation of the school's code of conduct for academic dishonesty, malicious sabotage, and falsifying information during an inquiry. He was suspended immediately. A note would be added to his transcript. He'd lose his degree if he appealed and lost. I didn't celebrate. I just slept. For the first time in weeks, I slept for 12 hours straight. The strange thing about vindication is how quiet it feels. No parade, no trophy, no satisfying movie credits. Just a gentle unraveling of the pressure that had been strangling me for weeks, one knot at a time. A few days after the hearing, I got another email, this time from Solvance Tech. The subject line read, "We'd love to talk." I thought it was a mistake. I stared at it for 10 minutes before opening it. They said they'd been impressed by my project. They appreciated my poise under pressure. Would I be interested in a short-term internship over the summer? I read it 3 times before I believed it was real. I replied, said yes. And 2 weeks later, I was in a glass office building, writing actual code for real clients under a senior dev who treated me with more respect in 5 minutes than Tyler had in 4 years. Meanwhile, the fallout continued back at campus. Tyler tried to appeal the suspension. He claimed he was set up, that I'd forged the screenshots, that I'd planned it all ahead of time to make him look bad. But digital forensics don't lie. The files came with metadata. The messages had been pulled from verified sources. The timestamps were all consistent. Even the lab logs confirmed his presence alone with my files at the time of the sabotage. His appeal was denied in less than 48 hours. From what I heard, he left campus in the middle of the night, cleared out his dorm, and disappeared without saying goodbye to anyone. There were rumors. Some said he transferred, some said he dropped out entirely. I didn't care enough to check. The weirdest part? I didn't feel triumphant. I felt sad. Not for him, but for the version of me that had once believed people like Tyler wouldn't win. Because the truth is they do, all the time. They get ahead. They charm their way into promotions and cheat through partnerships and ride the hard work of people who stay quiet. But not that time. Not on my back. Not again. My final semester finished with a blur of final grades and quiet dinners. I got a plaque from the department for excellence in independent work. A few professors pulled me aside and told me they admired how I handled everything. My inbox was full of DMs from students who said they'd dealt with their own Tylers and felt powerless. Some said my story gave them the nerve to speak up. I didn't answer most of them, but I read every word. Graduation day came. I sat with my friends, not really hearing the speeches, not caring much about the ceremony itself. It felt symbolic, sure, but I was already somewhere else mentally. I'd been offered a full-time position at Solvance. I'd accepted. I was moving to the city in 2 weeks. But just before the ceremony ended, I got a text from an unknown number. It just said, "You're still a snake. You just wear a better mask." No name, no context. I didn't need one. I deleted the message and never got another. A few months passed. I settled into my new job, new apartment, new life. My work was intense but fulfilling. My supervisor, Kelsey, asked for my input on real projects. I wasn't just writing code. I was part of design discussions, feature planning, team huddles. I felt like I belonged. But Tyler still lingered in the corners of my mind sometimes. Not out of fear, just curiosity. What did someone like him do after getting publicly humiliated? Did he learn? Did he double down? One Friday night in September, I found out. I was out with coworkers, grabbing drinks at a rooftop bar after a long sprint. One of the junior devs, Mina, was scrolling through her phone and suddenly said, "Whoa, isn't this the guy from your school?" She showed me her screen. It was a LinkedIn post. Tyler, standing in front of a brick wall holding a mic, speaking at some community tech event. The caption read, "From rock bottom to reboot, how I rebuilt my future after betrayal." Betrayal. I laughed, loudly. Mina raised an eyebrow. "You okay?" I waved it off. "Yeah, he just left out a few key details." She narrowed her eyes. "Is that the guy who—" Yeah, I didn't explain further. Part of me wanted to comment, to post the truth, to flood the replies with screenshots, to remind everyone who he really was. But I didn't, because I realized something important in that moment. I didn't need to. People like Tyler always end up building cardboard thrones on unstable ground. Let them. The truth doesn't need a megaphone when the silence says more. The following Monday, I started mentoring a group of interns. One of them asked if I had advice for surviving team projects. I smiled. Document everything, I said. Keep backups. And trust your instincts, especially when they tell you someone's smile doesn't reach their eyes. Winter came fast that year. The city turned gray and wet and cold, but inside the office it was warm, and my work kept me busy. I rarely thought about the past anymore. Tyler had become a ghost story, something people whispered about when talking about academic betrayal, a cautionary tale professors gently referenced when forming project pairs. I thought I was past it. Then one morning, I walked into the office kitchen and saw Kelsey, my supervisor, standing with a woman I didn't recognize. They were deep in conversation, but I caught a few words. Boot camp. Redemption. Second chance. When Kelsey noticed me, she smiled. Hey, Alex. Come meet Riley. She just joined the HR team. She used to run a student code mentorship program with one of your former classmates. I felt something flicker in my chest. Which classmate? I asked, trying to keep my tone even. She paused. Tyler Grant, I think? He mentioned working on a senior project with you? I felt my hands curl into fists before I realized it. Oh, I said flatly. Yeah, we worked together. Riley smiled, oblivious. Small world, right? He said you were insanely talented. Said he learned a lot just watching you code. I didn't reply. I just nodded, excused myself, and walked straight to my desk. The rest of the day I couldn't concentrate. His name brought back too much. I found myself rereading the old screenshots like they were crime scene evidence. I replayed the exact moment he stood frozen in front of the projection screen, while the whole room watched him implode. And now he was networking? Still painting himself as a phoenix rising from the ashes? I didn't care what version of the story he told strangers, but the thought that he was using my work, my pain, as part of his redemption arc made me physically nauseous. That night, I wrote a long, unsent email. I explained everything. What he did, how he nearly tanked my academic record, how he lied and twisted and backstabbed, and then tried to spin it all into a motivational speech. I included screenshots, documents, all of it. I stared at the draft for an hour, then deleted it. I wasn't going to spend the rest of my life reliving a grudge just to protect people who didn't want to know the truth. If Kelsey ever asked, I'd tell her honestly. But I wasn't going to chase shadows. Instead, I put it behind me. And then the universe did something I wasn't prepared for. It gave me the opportunity to make peace with it. 2 months later, I was asked to speak at a university panel on software ethics. It was hosted by Kelridge. I hadn't been back since graduation. My initial reaction was to decline, but the idea gnawed at me. I realized maybe this was the way I closed the loop. I agreed. The event was low-key, just a few professors, a couple dozen students, and a handful of industry guests. I sat on stage next to 3 other alumni, all from different years, all with vastly different paths. We were asked about code plagiarism, AI misuse, collaboration dynamics, nothing unexpected. Then someone raised a hand in the back and asked, "What do you do if your project partner is trying to screw you over?" I smiled. I didn't name names. I didn't need to. But I told the story. The sabotage, the missing files, the Instagram post, the last-minute switch, the explosion during the presentation. I didn't make myself sound like a hero. I just told the truth about how hard it was to feel like you were being gaslit by someone who wore a smile like armor, how lonely it was to fight back when everyone else thought he was golden, and how important it was to quietly, methodically protect yourself. When I finished, the room was silent. Then a girl in the front row raised her hand and said, "Did they get expelled?" I shrugged. "They were suspended. He didn't come back." Someone else asked, "Did he ever apologize?" That one made me pause. "No," I said, and I stopped expecting one. After the panel, a few students came up to talk. Some asked questions, others just said thank you, but one guy lingered at the edge of the group, nervously checking his phone. When the others left, he approached. "Hey," he said quietly, "this might sound weird, but I know Tyler." I tensed slightly. "Oh?" "I met him through this tech bootcamp thing a few months ago. He never mentioned your name, but he tells that story all the time, except he says it was the school that screwed him over, that his partner sabotaged him." I rolled my eyes. "Figures." The guy hesitated. I didn't believe him. Something felt off. "Hearing your side tonight? It makes a lot more sense." I didn't say anything. I just nodded. He added, "I think he's still lying to himself, pretending none of it was his fault." "That's his problem," I said. "I've made peace with mine." He smiled. "Well, thanks for sharing. Honestly, it meant a lot." After he left, I stepped outside. The campus was quiet, lit by soft yellow lamps, the same ones I'd walked under for 4 years. I remembered every step, every late night, every sprint to the lab, every vending machine coffee, and I realized something I hadn't before. I wasn't angry anymore. I wasn't afraid of Tyler or what people thought or what lies might still be floating out there. I had the truth. And that was enough. A year passed. Then another. I moved up at Solvents, promoted to lead developer on a product line we'd started building from scratch. I led my own team, mentored new hires, spoke at tech conferences. Slowly, I became the kind of person I used to admire from afar. Competent, composed, and trusted. Every once in a while, I'd still get the occasional message on LinkedIn from someone who'd worked with Tyler in some capacity. Some were vague compliments. Others were quiet warnings. None of them surprised me. He had rebranded himself as a resilient speaker, built a small following online, and even launched a podcast called Crash and Code. The tagline was something like, "Fail fast, rise faster." I never listened to it. I didn't need to. What struck me wasn't that he kept telling his twisted version of the story. It was how many people believed it. Maybe because they needed to. Maybe because it was easier to root for someone who said they'd been wronged than to ask if they were the ones doing the damage. One night, I found myself at a networking event hosted in a co-working space downtown. I hadn't planned to stay long. I wasn't big on these kinds of things. But I ended up chatting with an old professor from Kelridge who introduced me to a few folks from a partner firm. And then I saw him. Tyler. He looked exactly the same. Same perfect haircut, same calculated casual clothes, same confident posture. He was laughing with a group of people near the refreshments table. Our eyes met across the room. He paused, just for a second, then looked away. I didn't move. I just watched him. He knew I was there, but he didn't come over. Later that evening, as the crowd thinned, he passed by the exit where I stood saying goodbye to a few colleagues. "Hey," he said softly. I looked at him. "Hey." There was a long pause. "I guess we both made it," he said with a faint smirk. I shrugged. "Some of us had to fight for it." He nodded, not denying it. "I heard you're doing well." "I am." He hesitated again. "I never really said sorry back then." I raised an eyebrow. "Number you didn't." "I guess I didn't think you'd want to hear it." I didn't answer right away. I let the weight of that hang between us. "Look," he continued, voice quieter now. "I was a mess. I thought I could outsmart the system. I thought I could ride my charm like always. You weren't supposed to fight back." I met his gaze. "But I did." He nodded again slowly. "Yeah, you did. And I deserved it." For the first time, he looked small, not humiliated, just human. "I'm not asking you to forgive me," he said. "I just wanted to say it. Even if it's years too late." I could have walked away. I could have lit him up, humiliated him again, reminded him of every lie, every backstab, every smug smile he'd thrown my way. But I didn't, because something in me had changed. I no longer needed closure from him. I'd already built it myself. "You know," I said, "some people rebuild themselves honestly. Others just change the wrapping. I hope for your sake it's not just a new mask." He gave a dry laugh. "That's fair." We stood there a few seconds more, two people who'd once shared a project and a betrayal, now standing in separate lives. Then he said, "Take care, Alex." "You too, Tyler." He walked away, and that was it. No drama, no final twist, just two very different endings. I went home that night and poured myself a drink, sat on the balcony, looked out at the skyline I now called home. I thought about the path that led me here. Every sleepless night, every failure, every moment I nearly gave up. I thought about how close I'd come to losing everything because someone else couldn't stand the thought of not being the smartest guy in the room. And I thought about the moment I decided to fight back, not with rage, not with revenge, but with truth. Because sometimes that's all it takes to win. One quiet, undeniable truth, spoken at the right time, to the right people, in the right way. The kind of truth that doesn't just expose a lie, but unravels it completely. That was the moment everything changed. And I never looked back.